Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Last First Date Radio, featuring interviews with experts in dating, relating, and mating in midlife. And now, here's your host, Sandy Weiner.
Hello, this is Sandy, and welcome to Last First Date Radio, the place to be for creating healthy, lasting relationships in midlife. Today, I am excited to be speaking with relationship coach Samantha Burns about how to get over your breakup and move on to create the love life that you deserve. And in my 10 years as a life and dating coach, what I know for sure is that if you identify and heal any of your unhealthy patterns from your past, if you honor and value all the parts of yourself, especially the parts that people told you were too much or not enough, because we all have that, you're going to transform your love life, and you will become the woman of value who attracts in the love you desire and deserve. Every week I bring you a tip on how to become that woman of value, and this week's tip is step number 18, which is learn to receive graciously. How often are we givers and have a really hard time receiving? And this is something that I talk about all the time in my work with clients, because the ability to receive is actually something that's innately feminine for all you women who are listening. We are built to receive, we are made to receive, and yet we have a really hard time receiving. And a quick little exercise that I just learned from a woman who I'm actually co-creating a day-long training with on how to let love in, especially for successful, overachieving women, is just about this topic. And so what she does, and I love this, is to have you take a deep breath in and then hold it, and then take another deep breath in and hold it, and another deep breath and hold it. And eventually you're going to have to let that air out because your lungs can't keep taking in and in and in. And so the relationships that we have with others is about giving and receiving. It's not just about taking something in, and it's not just about letting something out. It's about both. So learning to receive graciously is so important. And before I bring Samantha on, just a quick shout out to my Facebook group. We have a private Facebook group. It's called Your Last First Date. And if you are not yet a member, I invite you to join us. It is for women over 40 who are either in a relationship or single and looking for a relationship support. It is a place that is heavily monitored. We have 7 daily monitors, one for each day of the week, so that this group does not go off the rails as so many large groups do. We have 2,400 plus members, so keeping a good eye on the group is important to me, because I've seen too many groups that just get into angry, man-bashing, negative spaces, and that's absolutely against group policy. So if you're looking for a place for positive support, go to Your Last First Date in Facebook and join us. And now for our special guest, Samantha Burns. She is a licensed counselor and relationship coach. She helps singles survive soul-crushing breakups and become smarter, more intentional daters so they can create the life and the love life they deserve. Samantha has a private practice in Boston, Massachusetts, but she works with clients all over the country, virtually, offering breakup, dating, and relationship coaching services. She's also the author of a new book called Breaking Up and Bouncing Back, Moving On to Create the Life You Deserve. And she's an expert contributor to many big publications, including Women's Health, Brides, Elite Daily, Cosmo, and more. Join me now for episode number 307, How to Get Over Your Breakup with Samantha Burns. Welcome, Samantha.
Wow, thank you, Sandy. 307. That's amazing.
I've been doing this for 5.5 years. It's like crazy. But it's helped me to meet amazing people like you. So I'm excited to have you on today and talk about this really important topic. And so talk to us a little bit. I'm sure you have a backstory on why you became a breakup expert and why you're so passionate about this particular topic.
Absolutely. So as you shared with my bio, I am a licensed counselor, so I have my master's in counseling psychology, And but that's the expertise there. But really, I fell into the breakup work. I always was interested in couples therapy. I've worked my whole career doing couples counseling, and I fell into the breakup work because of my own big, what I call soul-crushing breakup. During that time, I thought, I was alone and the only one going through such a horrible experience. And what I realized was that this was not the case, but yet so many people feel alienated and alone. And in my case, I had been dating my live-in boyfriend for about 4.5 years. This was the person that I thought I was going to marry. We had talked about engagement. And on the day that I thought he was planning to propose, he actually told me that I was not the one for him. And my entire world came crashing down. The future I envisioned together disappeared, and I was just so confused by his inability to articulate what was missing in our relationship or why I wasn't the one after spending so many good years together, and then kind of went to that dark place that so many people go, which is assuming something was wrong with me, that I wasn't good enough in some way, that I was broken. And I got into this mental space where I was questioning, why wasn't I enough to make him happy? Why wasn't I good enough for him? Why didn't he love me enough for us to stay together? How could he just throw away our past and the future that we had been planning? And what I realized was that if I was a typically resilient and stable person, I had a strong support network, and I was a professional counselor, so I think I have more knowledge about coping skills and mental health than the average person, and I was struggling this much, then how painful and confusing and isolating this experience of heartbreak must be for everyone else. And I share my experience with you because what I realized in going through my own heartbreak and then in working with hundreds of other clients in this niche and diving into so much research in order to write my book around this, was that even though we all have our own unique breakup situations, the thoughts and behaviors and processes we experience along the way is all fairly similar. So that was really my goal in my work and in my book and my program, was to help people realize that they're not alone and that there is, a path to follow in order to turn your breakup pain into wisdom gained, right? To make it an opportunity for personal growth. And I have a feeling you probably also agree that some of our biggest transformation stems from our worst pain.
Mhm. Well, thank you for sharing your heartbreaking story. And you ended up, there's a happy ending. You ended up with this amazing guy.
There is a happy ending. I have a great husband. We've been married for just under 4 years now, and every day I just feel so grateful to have him in my life. And I often say that I feel grateful, but I don't feel lucky. And I say I don't feel lucky because I intentionally created the life I'm living in our relationship. And that's so much what this book is about, and what I stand for is that it's not just luck. There's strategic things that you can do to attract and receive love and to have a good, healthy relationship with yourself in order to be the best partner that you can be. So, and I really believe everyone can have that, and that's kind of my goal and my passion, is helping other people create such a fulfilling, reciprocal relationship. And you talked about receiving, especially for, I call them type A, high-powered women who like to control everything, and I definitely fall into that category as well, and to be in the reciprocal relationship where, again, someone is giving to you and you can receive, because so many of the women, which I'm sure you've had experience of working with as well, are often giving, and then burning out and resentful when their partner isn't stepping up to the plate.
Mhm. Yeah, we have so many patterns that we don't even realize that we do subconsciously. And learning these tools and the steps that you're going to teach people, both in the book and you'll share some of that today on the show, is just so important. I love that you say, I feel grateful but not lucky. because I think so many people think that, it's all luck. You just happen to be one of the lucky ones. And, well, you're pretty, you have a good figure, you're this, you're that, you're smart. There's amazing people out there who don't attract in love because they don't have these tools. And it's really the one thing that gets in the way. And so I want people to not give up hope and to know that instead of focusing on what did I do wrong, let's talk about, things that they can do. But before we get to the how-tos, I'd like for you to share some of the struggles that people have with breakups. Like, why is it so hard for people?
So the most important topic I think that I cover is helping people understand their heartbreak from a neuropsychological perspective. And before you hit snooze, because I said neuroscience, I'm going to break it down to be pretty easily digestible, because I think once you understand how a breakup works in your physical body, you can be more compassionate with yourself. You can understand why you're clinging on, because so many people come to me where they're obsessing and ruminating about their breakup, and they've wasted weeks and sometimes years hung up on their ex and in pain and not able to let go. So when you understand why, it's pretty helpful. So I think the most important thing is to understand that your breakup impacts you on a neuropsychological level similar to drug withdrawals. So as though you are addicted to your ex and you are withdrawing from drugs. And to understand that, you also need to know how love works in our body. So not just emotionally, but physiologically. So brain scan studies have shown that when you think of or see someone that you love, so they held up pictures in this brain scan study of people's partners or people's exes, the reward center of your brain is activated, and it releases a neurotransmitter, which is like a hormone called dopamine, that's responsible for giving you that giddy and loving feeling. So again, emotions, or what we think of as emotions, aren't just emotions. They're actually chemical reactions in our bodies. And this is also the same brain region associated with drug addiction. And so when we're in love with our partner, we are literally addicted to our partner. We're just used to thinking of addiction as a negative, but in this case, it's a positive. So, for instance, if, when you're first dating someone, you have them on your mind all of the time. You're driving in your car, you're smiling, catching yourself glowing in the mirror. And this happens in those early falling in love stages because we have an increase in the stress hormone called cortisol, which actually lowers our level of serotonin. And when we have lower levels of serotonin, that is what's responsible for those obsessive, infatuated thoughts at the beginning of a relationship. So those are kind of a positive experience. When we are very physical with our partners, we have a lot of skin-to-skin contact, our body releases oxytocin, which is a bonding hormone that makes us feel attached to someone. And we also start to miss red flags about someone's behavior. They say love is blind because part of our brain, it takes a nap. There's these neuroresponses that shut down our ability to make judgments and critical assessments about people. So when we're in that honeymoon phase, we're kind of blind to some of their behaviors or who they really are. And oftentimes, you go in past 6 months with someone and all of a sudden you're seeing all these things that annoy you, or you're questioning, is this really the best match for me? And that's because our brain has shut down on us in certain ways. And so when you look at love and your ex through this addiction framework, when we then split up and we break up, we cut off communication, we cut off physical touch, and our brain goes through withdrawals. It's saying, where did my lover go? I need them to feel good. Your brain is hormonally, chemically dependent on this person in your life. So it's used to getting its daily hit of love, and now it's gone. And that's really when we experience those feelings in an early breakup that almost mimic anxiety and depression and can lead to full-blown, diagnosable anxiety and depression. But we have difficulty sleeping, we're crying, we're anxious, we have changes in our appetite and eating behaviors. Some people under this intense stress, emotionally eat everything in sight. Others have zero appetite. difficulty sleeping, where a lot of people either experience insomnia, where they can't fall asleep, they have a lot of racing thoughts about the relationship that ended, or they're just sleeping their entire day away and they can't get out of bed. And so we also experience what's called triggers. So triggers are people, places, and things that make you think about your ex. So this could be, walking past your old favorite brunch spot, or certain songs on the radio, recipes, smells. I know for me, when I was out driving and I would see the same truck on the road that my ex used to drive, I would think that it was a sign from the universe and we were supposed to be together, and then I'd miss him like crazy. So these triggers can lead to intrusive thinking and acting impulsively. People surprise themselves. Maybe it's they send, 20 texts in a row without a response, or they drive by someone's house almost like in a stalkerish way. But we do some pretty irrational things, or at least we think them. I mean, I can't tell you how many of my clients, fantasize about, physically harming their ex, and we don't even recognize ourselves in these moments, and they make us feel a little bit crazy. But to understand that this is all part of the physiological process of withdrawing from love, and even more so, our body processes a breakup as though it underwent physical pain. So there's certain parts of your brain, not the part that processes like if someone actually hit you, but then like the aftermath of that pain that resides in your body, that's activated in your body when you go through a breakup. I remember just sitting propped up in my bed, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut, and that's really what's going on there. And there's even something called broken heart syndrome, and I promise you, if you're listening to this radio show right now, you are not going to die, but there has been cases where people's their physical heart was so weakened under emotional stress that it had led to death. So it might feel like you're going to die. Again, that's very, very rare, but I just want to emphasize how much of a physiological reaction that we have. And so one of the things that I like to tell my clients that might be helpful for your listeners to hear is that what I see people doing is they misattribute all of this pain to the conclusion that their ex must have been the one for them because they're in so much pain. But it's more helpful to reframe the pain you're in as simply a physiological response to withdrawing from love. So less emphasis on your ex and how you were supposed to be together. They are the end-all, be-all for you, and more so that this pain you're feeling is simply a physiological response to withdrawing from love.
Yeah, I've been there, definitely, and so many of the things you're saying I see with clients, and I see it on my Facebook group all the time. I once had a client who had to work with the guy that he broke up with her. And it was a toxic relationship from the beginning. He was so clear with her that he could not commit to a relationship. And she did all the giving and none of the receiving. And then one day he was just like, you know what, I'm not in love with you. And she had to see him at work all the time. And it was so hard to heal from that heartbreak because it was a constant reopening of the wound and that trigger, right? And that and so it was that addiction she was going through. Like, imagine if you had a drug in your face as you're trying to withdraw from the drug. And he finally got moved. Yeah, so it was a combination of he moved to another location. She got some psychiatric help, which helped her to get over the hump of it because she was obsessed. And
of course,
she's also happily married now, which is good news. He was a stepping stone. Yeah.
Yeah.
But when you're in it, what did you say?
Oh, I was just going to say that, which is why it's so important to set healthy boundaries after a breakup, because your body needs time and space to withdraw from love and to physically burn itself out. And love will die. It will burn out. But when you're constantly in an environment with your ex, or maybe you keep photos of the two of you around, or you have his sweatshirt in your closet, like when there's just these reminders that you're constantly facing, a trigger that sets you back emotionally every time. And, just something you said about that client, how this guy said from the get-go that he wasn't able or interested in being able to give her the commitment or relationship that she wanted. One thing that's just I always emphasize to my female clients is that men often say what it is that they mean. And we like to overanalyze and intellectualize and kind of think, well, what does that maybe mean? But he was telling her what that meant. And then she kept giving and giving and overextending herself.
And she kept asking me, like, what do you think he meant by that? And I'd be like, he meant exactly what he said. And she wouldn't hear me because she was so obsessed. Like, she just could not take it in. But part of her knew, but it was also familiar. She had a narcissistic parent. She had a narcissistic husband. She was used to being on the receiving end of selfishness and narcissism and trying to win the love of somebody who couldn't give it to her. So it was a great learning experience, painful, but in the end she ended up with somebody who was loving and giving and cherished her. And she had to go through this to get to that point of being able to be open to receiving him. So it's so important to heal after a breakup. And if you can give us, even a brief outline of some of the steps you take clients through and some of what you have in your book about some of the steps that people can go through to heal from a breakup, that would be great.
Sure. Well, first and foremost, I talk about a 90-day no-contact rule, which if you're in the throes of an early-on breakup that, you're living minute to minute, let alone day to day, so that might seem really overwhelming, but just taking it minute to minute and day by day, knowing and committing to yourself that just today, no contact. But the reason why I suggest the 90-day no contact is because of that neuropsychological response that we have in giving your body time to heal. And people will be amazed in just, those 3 months. And in those 3 months, of course, there are many therapeutic exercises and self-love work to be doing and reflections. There's some deeper inner work that I can mention in a moment, but you're doing things to work on yourself and to invest in yourself during that time. And after 30 days, it's not like poof, all of your feelings are gone and you're 100% and ready to be in a relationship with someone else. It could happen, just that you'll be able to make more rational, logical decisions that aren't so emotionally based and driven because you've given yourself this time and space to heal. And the people that I think struggle the most, what I call in my book, that I kind of categorize your breakups into two groups. One is the cold turkey cutoff, which is people who are really good at having one breakup conversation. You exchange belongings, and that's really it. You kind of go your separate ways. Doesn't mean you're not in pain, but that you have really strong boundaries. The other group, though, is what I call the hanging on hookup, and this is where people continue to communicate. Maybe they're texting. They could just be passively liking each other's photos on social media. They could still be sleeping together, but they're still involved in each other's lives. And unless you take that time and space, no one has ever gone from lovers to platonic friends overnight. It just doesn't happen. No. So it's like really being able to take that space. And so in my book, I give all sorts of suggestions of, self-care, and, self-care survival skills, things to be doing when you are in that kind of obsessing and dwelling and ruminating mindset to get out of it. And then also really, when we go through a big breakup, we've lost a sense of our identity and we're questioning, who am I now? We know we're not the same person we were before the breakup, and it's not your job to get back to that person because it's your job to create an even new, better, improved version of who you were. And we kind of feel like we have these borrowed parts of ourselves, like things that have been influenced by our ex, because one of the beautiful things about being in a relationship is, expanding your worldview and taking on new hobbies and interests and just growing with that person. So you feel like they've impacted your life, but now that they're out of your life, you're like, who am I? So it's so important to identify new goals and hobbies and interests, and they could be, personally, they could be, fitness goals, it could be in your career, in moving. They could be all sorts of things, but really creating a new sense of purpose, and we do that through identifying new goals. And then also I think the most helpful parts of my book and the work that I do is helping people, and this actually can tie into what you were sharing about your clients, is what I call it's not what I call it, it's called attachment theory, but it's understanding how our early childhood interactions with our caregivers impact who we are in our adult romantic relationships and the type of closeness and intimacy we desire or feel comfortable with. And from a very early age, we've learned whether people are reliable or dependable or inconsistent or are going to hurt us or break our trust or that we can rely on. And so we've had all these experiences, and they form the way we interact with our partners. And so it sounds like when you were talking about your client, one thing that just, stuck out to me was that what I often see is someone with what's called an anxious attachment style. So that means that you really desperately desire a lot of closeness and intimacy, but you're so fearful of being left, or you're so fearful that your partner won't like the real version of you, so you're not necessarily authentic, or you let them lead because you're afraid that if you do or say the wrong thing, you'll push them away. You're mistrusting, maybe you've been cheated on or hurt by people you've been close to. And so you cling, and you oftentimes lower your standards, and you put up with less than you deserve because you're so desperate for a connection. And you tend to be attracted to and drawn to someone with what's called an avoidant attachment style, which is someone who they do want love, but they prioritize their independence and their freedom, and they have a lot of difficulty communicating about their feelings. They tend to dodge a lot of questions or distance themselves when it starts to feel too real. They don't like people depending on them. And so you get the person with the anxious style who's very much a giver and just really wants that connection, who's attracted to someone who's more of the taker, and eventually, your emotional needs aren't being met in that relationship, and someone, they back off. Or in that case, the guy says, I'm not really looking for a relationship, but, put in just enough that clearly there was some sort of reason why she stuck around, but never really getting her needs met.
Mhm. Yeah, I do a lot of work around attachment. Yeah, it's such an important part of understanding yourself, and I highly recommend that people really listen to what Samantha's saying, because when you understand your connection to your childhood, to your caregiver, your family of origin, you really can start to break some of those toxic patterns that you've had in your past relationships and be attracted to a healthier partner.
I call it a new creating a new secure framework for love. It's creating a new framework for love, so it doesn't. Once you understand those patterns, just because we have them, it's so important to acknowledge them and to thank your attachment style, because it serves a purpose and a reason. It developed for survival, and it kept you alive, and that's great. But now, as an adult, no matter how old you are, it's not like we say at 18 you're an adult, but no one ever really just transitions into adulthood and changes. We carry with us all of these dynamics and patterns. So it's so important to acknowledge now as an adult that you don't need those attachment styles anymore, the dysfunctional ones, and that you can create a healthier, more secure framework to start operating in your love life, so that you can have that healthy relationship that you really desire.
So what I love about so much of what you're sharing today is that the beginning of what you were talking about, being obsessed and looking within and saying, what did I do wrong? Those are all ways of giving up our power. And what you're sharing are ways that we can take back our power, and that we can do what we have control over. Like, we don't have control over whether somebody stays or goes. We have control about how we show up in a relationship. We have control about who we choose. The choosing part is probably the most important part. Being really, very ruthless with our selection process. And we have control over whether we stay or go. And so many people give up their power. I did it so much in my life until I learned these wonderful tools. And so you're providing such a great resource for people, and so many people are so in that self-beat-up mode. So I know that we don't really have a lot of time left, but I do want to get into just that next step of dating again, because I know there's a lot of confusion about when to date again after a breakup. So if you can address that, like how much time do you think people need, and is it really about the time, or is it about the work you do during that time? And then the second part is, like, if you can give some ways to get over some of the fears and jump back into the dating world.
I think you hit the nail on the head. It's really not about time in terms of days and weeks and months, but it's really about the work that you do. So I call it in my book your love lessons, which are your nuggets of wisdom that you get through reflection. And there's so many therapeutic exercises and questions that I ask to guide you in this self-reflective work. But so it's about understanding your love lessons and understanding how you're, what is it that you really need and want in a future partner? What did and didn't you like about yourself in the relationship? How did it bring out the best in you or the worst in you? And really understanding, too, things like core values. So I call this the unromantic side of falling in love. It's the very pragmatic side. We need more than just physical attraction and a feeling to have a successful partnership, someone that we spend our life with. We need to know, do we align on really big things? Core values could be anything from it's you define it. It's what's most important to you, what you're most passionate about. It could be religion. It could be about minimizing your carbon footprint on this planet. It could be about your work-life balance. There's so many, and I provide a lot of them in the book, but being pragmatic about who you're choosing, aligning personality traits, can they speak your love languages, all of these things. So, gosh, I'm going off on a tangent here. So I could talk about this from so many angles. But so it's about really understanding who you are and that healing work. So, and also when you dive into dating again, I teach my clients how to date with intent. For me, dating with intent is about dating with a purpose and, really looking for your next lifelong partner, not just to have fun. But I do think dating should be fun. And if that means that you just want to get yourself out there and go on some dates, you absolutely do not have to jump into anything serious right away. And part of your experience in dating is learning about yourself, which contributes to your love lessons so that you can start choosing and picking smarter as you go. So taking off that pressure of yourself that you have to that you have to just jump in and be ready to go right away, as long as you're being honest about what it is you're looking for and not intentionally misleading anyone. I think that's important. And also, too, I think a big breakup really shakes up your life, and it disrupts the vision of the future that you had planned. And I know just how disappointing and frustrating when you don't feel like you're meeting your life timelines. So I do, encourage people to take off this pressure and let go of these artificial timelines that you're creating in your head because you think you should be at a certain point at a certain time in your life. But these shoulds aren't facts, which leads me, I guess, to my next point is that we treat our thoughts as facts. And so when we're getting ready to date again, we might have a lot of kind of self-defeating thoughts like I'm going to die alone, or I'll never meet anyone, or there's no good men out there, or no one will love me. So one of my biggest tips about preparing to date again is really challenging these automatic thoughts that you're treating like facts. And I walk you through an exercise to do that in my book, but it's saying like maybe your thought is, I don't know, what's a common fear? That there are no good men out there. So to challenge that is really thoughts of abundance and hope. And you say to yourself, what am I talking about? There are many good men, high-quality men out there who will love me, who will put in effort into courting me, that I deserve to be with, who are up to my, standards of how I want to be treated. And that might be challenging at first because you don't believe it, and you don't believe it because you're treating your automatic thoughts as facts. So it's so important to be aware of the thoughts that we're thinking, which then create our reality, or a negative self-fulfilling prophecy that you will be alone. So we have to get rid of the stinking thinking and that junk in your head and really focus on abundant, hopeful thoughts and messages, and putting out that positive and is what we will receive and attract back.
Yeah, this is such an important piece. I think so many people go back into dating with such scarcity thoughts and fearful thoughts, and they project so much of their past experience onto the person in front of them. I even had a client once who was dating a guy, and she had so many fears that kept popping up, and he said, listen, I'm not the guy who hurt you. He came right out and said that, and I thought that was great. It was like, hello, I am a new guy, clean slate here. So, we do that.
Absolutely. There's a story. I mean, my husband, he's well-versed in all of the psychological language and theories, and I talked through all of this stuff with him. And it's funny because I came from a more anxious attachment style, especially in this past relationship, in the one with my big heartbreak where he was more avoidant, and little things kind of set me off, and I've shifted into a much more secure attachment style now. But it's very interesting. If something is triggering for me, I can talk about it with my husband. And in fact, something came up. I don't remember what exactly it was, but something came up the other day, and my husband jokingly, he fakes, uses his hand as if it's a telephone, and he goes, "Hello, is this Samantha's anxious attachment style? I just want you to know that you have nothing to worry about, and give me a big hug now," or something. And he puts the phone down, and it was just so cute, right? Because he knows me and exactly, what might, trigger something or come up. But then the second you can talk about it, and when you're with someone secure, and when you function from a secure style, you can talk about anything and feel reassured or validated, and you have nothing to worry about. There's such less conflict in relationships when you can actually communicate about things. And that's where the whole picking smart and you choosing your partner is so important, because if you choose someone who activates your attachment system, then you're going to wind up with a lot of conflict and constantly feeling on edge or worried or like you want to escape. And so that's why the picking piece, when you educate yourself on this, it's the best thing you can do for yourself.
Well, I love how your husband dealt with it and used humor. That's a great story. And I think that's when we know we've really come so far, when we can kind of laugh at where we used to be. And
Absolutely.
when we're with a partner who's not mocking us but supports us, and you found that. And so I hope that really is a sign for everybody that there's hope, that, that breakup was not the right person for you, and that there's something better on the other side. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom today. I can't wait for your book to come out. And if you can let people know where they can find you and talk about your book release.
Absolutely. So first and foremost, my book is called Breaking Up and Bouncing Back, Moving On to Create the Love Life You Deserve. And it's available now for pre-order on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, and will be shipping and live on the bookshelves June 13th of this year, 2018. And I am pretty active on Instagram, and my handle is @LoveSuccessfully. And I also have one specifically dedicated to breakups, which is and you can also find me on Facebook. My personal account, which is open, to new friends, is Hello Samantha Burns, and my business page is Samantha Burns Love Successfully.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom today, and helping our listeners get over their breakup and bounce back to have the best life and the best love possible.
Thank you, Sandy. I appreciate you having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, everybody, for listening today. And if you love the show, we would appreciate a rate and review. Go to iTunes and just give us a quick rating. You're on Last First Date Radio. And that helps our show reach more people. And we hope that you go on your last first date very soon. Have a great day.